The first time I saw the house, I thought, this is mine. It was ridiculous. Really. A 3-story Victorian in the middle of a gentrifying neighborhood, all gables and gingerbread trim, with a wraparound porch that sagged like a tired sigh. The realtor called it a fixer-upper and said things like charming original details and potential for equity growth. What she meant was that the plumbing hissed like a cobra, the floorboards groaned under my weight, and the attic smelled like wet cardboard and regret. But I didn't care. I'd spent my 30s in sterile apartments with concrete floors and IKEA furniture, places that felt like they'd been designed by a spreadsheet. This house, this mess, was different. It had character. It had bones. It had a kitchen with a window seat and a clawfoot tub that still gleamed under decades of grime. It was imperfect, and I wanted it desperately. So I bought it. 3 months later, I was knee-deep in a nightmare. The first major red flag came on a Tuesday, when I went to fix a leak under the sink and discovered that the pipes weren't just old. They were dead. Like literal corpse-level decomposition. I'd turned the wrench, and the whole thing crumbled into rust, dousing me in water that smelled like sulfur and despair. Then there was the electrical panel. Oh, the electrical panel. I tried to replace a faulty outlet myself and nearly fried the entire block. The wiring was knob and tube, which I'd known in theory but hadn't fully grasped until I realized it meant no ground wires, no circuit breakers, and yes, your toaster could kill you. And the floors. Don't get me started on the floors. They sloped like a funhouse mirror, and the second floor landing had a dip so pronounced that I'd once rolled a quarter across the hallway without touching it. By week 6, I'd given up. I was an engineer, not a magician. Sure, I could calculate load-bearing walls and beam deflection in my sleep, but I couldn't do it all alone. I needed help, so I did what any reasonable, slightly unhinged adult would dog. I posted an ad on Craigslist titled, "Experienced contractor needing total disaster, willing to pay reasonably." Let me tell you something about contractors. They're either geniuses or con artists, and sometimes both. The first guy to respond was named Daryl. He showed up in a stained wife beater and a truck that looked like it had survived the apocalypse. He sniffed the air like he was trying to diagnose the house by scent alone, then said, "You got termites, buddy. Big ones. Gonna cost you $5,000 minimum. Do you have a license?" I asked. He squinted at me. I got experience. That was the end of Daryl. Next came Marjorie, a wiry woman in her 60s who claimed to have restored 12 homes just like this one. She carried a clipboard and a cloud of lavender perfume, and she insisted on calling me honey every 3 seconds. "You're gonna need a new roof, honey," she said, peering up at the ceiling, "and a new furnace, honey, and probably a therapist, honey." I liked her, but she was overbooked for 6 months. Then there was Jake, who was 22 and looked like he'd been raised by a Home Depot. He had a tattoo of a wrench on his forearm and a habit of saying, "No cap, bro," in response to basic questions. When I asked him about his experience, he said, "I watched a lot of HGTV, bro." That's basically school, right? I didn't call him back. By day 4 of the interview gauntlet, I was desperate. I'd narrowed it down to 2 candidates: Gerald, a 60-year-old retired electrician with a raspy laugh and a tendency to call me Sonny. He seemed competent but also like he might die mid-job, which felt morbidly plausible. Lucas Reyes, 28, listed as a general contractor, with a portfolio link and a single sentence in his email, "Your job posting caught my eye. Available for consultation today, LR." The portfolio was sparse but promising. Photos of renovated kitchens and exposed brick walls, a before and after of a sagging porch fixed with surgical precision. The man knew what he was doing, but it was the photo attached to his email that hooked me. Not the work. He didn't include a selfie, exactly. Just a shot of him mid-project, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hard at askew, holding a level like it was a lightsaber. His face was half-shadowed, but his eyes, sharp, dark, amused, were unmistakable. He looked like he'd walked out of a hardware store ad and into my inbox. I hesitated for exactly 12 seconds before replying, "Available today." The morning of the consultation, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., which was 2 minutes before my alarm. Classic. I made coffee in my French press, double-checked the blueprints I'd printed for the meeting, and paced the living room like a nervous animal. The house creaked around me, its walls whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. By 9:15 a.m. Lucas was late. At 9:20 I started rehearsing what I'd say if he ghosted me. At 9:25, a black pickup rumbled up the street, kicking gravel. He was driving like he owned the road. Or like he didn't care if he did. The truck was dented, its paint faded to a stormy gray, and it wheezed when he killed the engine. Lucas stepped out, and I forgot how to breathe. In person, he was more. Not just taller than I'd expected, though he was. Easily 6'2", with broad shoulders and a stance that said, "I know how much space I take up, and I don't apologize for it." His dark hair was tousled, curling at the nape of his neck, and his jawline could have cut glass. He wore a faded tee that clung to his torso like it was begging for mercy, and his jeans hung low enough that I caught a flash of belt buckle before I forced my eyes upward. He squinted at the house, then turned to me. "Ethan." "Yeah." I cleared my throat. "Hey." His smirk was immediate, effortless. "This the patient." "The patient," I echoed, gesturing to the porch. "She's got structural issues. Floors sag. Wiring's a nightmare. Plumbing's, well, it's loud. Like it's angry." He arched an eyebrow. "You're telling me the pipes are mad at you?" "They're vocal," I said, too quickly. My face burned. "Shut up, Ethan." Lucas laughed, a warm, unexpected sound, and ran a hand through his hair. "All right, let's take a look." As he passed me, I caught a whiff of sawdust and something citrusy. My stomach flipped, sharp and foreign. I told myself it was caffeine jitters. Inside, the house groaned around us. Lucas crouched to inspect the floorboards, his movements deliberate, almost reverent. I hovered, arms crossed, trying not to watch the way his biceps flexed as he pried up a loose plank. "You've got termite damage here," he said, tapping the wood. "And this joist, it's bowing. You're lucky the whole place hasn't collapsed into a sinkhole." "Lucky," I echoed weakly. He stood, brushing off his hands, and turned to face me. "How much of this do you want fixed?" "All of it," I thought, before realizing the question wasn't about the house. "Not really." "Everything?" I said. He smiled, slow and dangerous. "Then we'll start tomorrow." When he left, the air felt heavier, like the walls had exhaled. I sat on the stairs, my chest tight, and wondered when everything had stopped meaning the floorboards. I didn't date much. It wasn't that I was against it. On paper, I was a catch. Stable job, decent credit score, no pets, though I liked cats, hypothetically. But in practice, I'd never been good at the dance. Growing up, I'd been the quiet kid with a calculator in his pocket and a book in his backpack. In college, I'd traded the calculator for a laptop and the book for a textbook, and somehow ended up with a master's degree in structural engineering and zero romantic experience. My 20s had been a blur of grad school, internships, and the occasional awkward Tinder date that ended with me over-explaining the math behind suspension bridges. By 30, I'd accepted that romance wasn't my strong suit. I was fine being alone. I preferred being alone, but then Lucas Reyes walked into my house, and suddenly I wasn't so sure. It wasn't just his looks. Though God, the looks. It was the way he moved through the world, like he'd already decided what mattered and what didn't. He didn't apologize for his presence, didn't shrink to make others comfortable. He was the opposite of me. And that scared me, because I could already feel the cracks forming. The next morning, Lucas arrived at 7:45 a.m., carrying a thermos and a tool belt that made me question every life choice that had led me to this point. "Early bird," he said, nodding at my coffee mug. "Insomniac," I replied. He smirked and got to work. For the first hour, I hovered. I offered to help, but he waved me off with a, "You'll just get in the way, engineer." I hated that I liked it. By noon, he'd torn up half the living room floor, revealing a skeletal mess of joists and subflooring. He whistled as he worked, some low tune that made the air feel lighter. At one point, he called me over. "Check this out." I knelt beside him, close enough to smell that same citrusy scent mixed with sweat. He pointed to a beam. "See how this is cracked? You've got a moisture problem here. Probably from the roof leak I saw earlier. We'll have to reinforce it." I nodded, hyper-aware of his elbow brushing mine. "Right, reinforce." He glanced at me amused. "You okay, Cole?" "Fine," I lied. He didn't press me. Instead, he handed me a nail gun and said, "Here, you can help with the new subfloor." I blinked. "You trust me with this?" "Nah," he said, grinning, "but I like watching you freak out." And just like that, the house felt smaller, the air thicker. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was starting. By the end of the first week, I was exhausted. Lucas had torn up half the first floor, exposing rotting joists and warped beams like a surgeon dissecting a corpse. He worked fast, efficient, but with a kind of reverence for the house that surprised me. He didn't just fix things, he respected them. I, on the other hand, was unraveling. Every day, I found new ways to hate myself for hiring him, for letting him into my space, for letting him into my head. It started with the way he moved. Fluid, confident, like he'd already decided what mattered and what didn't. He'd lean against doorframes, arms crossed, watching me fumble with a blueprint or trip over a toolbox. He'd laugh, low and warm, and I'd feel it in my ribs. Then there were the touches. Accidental, I told myself. His elbow brushing mine as he explained a support beam. His hand on my shoulder to steady me when I tripped on a loose board. The way he'd hand me tools like he expected me to know what to do with them. I didn't know what to do with him, and worse, I didn't want to stop trying. It rained on Friday. Hard, the roof leaked in 3 places, and Lucas spent most of the afternoon crawling around the attic, muttering curses and tightening bolts. I brought him coffee, which he accepted with a grin that made my stomach twist. "You're getting better at this," he said, nodding at the mug. "At what?" "Being useful." I rolled my eyes. "I'm an engineer. I'm always useful." "Huh," he said, sipping his coffee. "You just keep telling yourself that." I stood there, watching him for a beat too long, until he raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just thinking about the roof." He smirked. "Ha, ha." There was a pause, thick electric, and then he leaned in just slightly, and I swear to God, my heart skipped. But then the rain picked up, and a fresh leak dripped onto his forehead, and he laughed, shaking his head. "Damn this house," he muttered, wiping his face. "It's got a vendetta against me." I laughed too, shaky, relieved, but the moment lingered, like a nail half driven into wood. It happened on Saturday. Lucas was patching a hole in the wall, shirt soaked through from sweat and dust. I'd offered to help, but he'd waved me off again. "Go sit down, Cole. You're gonna strain something." "I'm not that delicate," I snapped. He turned to me, wiping his brow. You sure about that?" I glared at him. "Yes." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, and I realized too late that he'd backed me into a corner. Literally, against the half-finished wall. He braced a hand on either side of my head, caging me in, his breath warm against my ear. "Prove it," he whispered, and then he kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative, just there, lips and teeth and heat, and I was gone. I kissed him back like I was drowning, like I'd been waiting for this my whole life. And when he pulled away, we were both breathing hard. He stared at me, eyes dark, unreadable. You okay? I swallowed. Define okay. He laughed, soft and breathless, and stepped back. Good. And then he went back to patching the wall like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just blown every circuit in my body. The house was nearly finished by the time winter rolled in. New floors, new plumbing, a roof that didn't leak. The place still creaked, still whispered secrets in the dark, but it was solid, stable, like me. Except I wasn't. Lucas handed me the final invoice on a Thursday. That's it, he said. You're all set. I stared at the paper, my name typed in clean professional letters. Thanks. He nodded. Anytime. A pause. Thick, heavy. Then he said, I'm heading out west next week. Got a job in Colorado. My chest tightened. Oh, yeah. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Snowboarding season's starting. Thought I'd chase it for a while. I nodded, because what else could I do? He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else. But then he just smiled, a small, sad thing, and turned to leave. Lucas, I blurted. He stopped. I wanted to say don't go. I wanted to say I kissed you back. I wanted to say I don't know how to do this, but I want to try. Instead, I said, stay safe. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. You too, engineer. And then he was gone. I still live in the house. It's warm now. Quiet. The floors don't sag. And the pipes don't hiss. It's perfect. But sometimes, when the wind rattles the windows, I swear I hear him. I don't know if he'll come back. I don't know if I'll ever stop building walls. But the house is strong. And maybe, one day I will be too.